Shotgun with Charlie.
Riding shotgun refers to the practice of sitting next to the driver in a moving vehicle. The term riding shotgun came around after the time of the stagecoach, when somebody used to sit next to the driver holding a shotgun, in case they ran into bandits. My name is Charlie Cook, and I drive a lot. I like to talk to people while I'm driving, so I interview people in my car while I'm driving. Welcome to Riding Shotgun with Charlie. All right, before we start this episode of Riding Shotgun with Charlie, I want to say if you are new to the channel, please make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel and hit the notification bell. That's good for all stuff YouTube. So if you could do that, I greatly appreciate that. I'm glad you guys are here. I'm glad you guys are watching the show. And if you like the show, please send it to someone else, forward it to someone, as I always appreciate that. Thanks for watching. All right, welcome to this episode of Riding Shotgun with Charlie. Today, we are outside of Detroit, Rock City, and I have with me Chris Cheng. Chris, thank you so much for being on the show.
We've been talking about doing this for years.
It has been.
It's been years.
I'm
stoked that this is finally happening.
This is the stuff that tickles me. We were at GRPC in Phoenix in 2019, and you came up to me and you're like, "Hey, listen, if you're in San Francisco, here's my number. I'd like to be on the show." And I'm like, okay, this is really cool. How do I get to San Francisco? And I just did a little California tour where I did some shows in California. And you were not in California.
I know. I was like, oh, my travel schedule is always so busy. Obviously, so many of us were doing good work all around the country.
All around the country.
Yeah, and so... I'm sad it didn't work out then, but here we are.
Here we are. So we are outside of Detroit, Michigan. We are at Rick Ector's ladies shooting event, and he doesn't have an official name for it, but he's trying to teach several hundred women. I'm going to say several hundred, but it really is probably hopefully going to be a couple thousand ladies in the next 2 days.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, it's a super popular event, and I've heard about Rick's event. I think this is its 9th year. 11th year. I think they skipped one. And so it's been around for 11 years. I think maybe they skipped one.
They missed 1 year. Yeah.
Anyway, but right, it's like lots of people in the gun community and the firearms industry know about this event. Right, it's free firearms training for women.
Yes.
And it's just such a great way to train new shooters, and we have amazing volunteer instructors. I'm volunteering my time, and I flew all the way from San Francisco for this event.
Yeah,
it's that kind of amazing event that I want to see this in person. There's just obviously no substitute for seeing something in person. I can read all about it and watch videos,
right. But yeah, you can read about it and you can hear people talk about it and stuff, but to actually sit and help several women learn the fundamentals of shooting is it's a really cool thing. So there's people here from you're from California. We've got me from Massachusetts, Connecticut, Ohio. Some ladies came from Illinois. Plus Rick's got a ton of people from Michigan. Patrick Collins came up from Georgia. So people from all over the place. This is really
from
cool
coast to coast and border to border.
Totally. 2 days teaching ladies to shoot. That's awesome stuff. But we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about you. Now, you became famous for being on Top Shot, for winning Top Shot. Before you were doing Top Shot, you were like a cello player, and you worked at Google.
Yeah, so my day job was working at Google, and I'm a musician, a double bassist, obviously not a cello, but
not a cellist. All right.
I'm a double bassist.
I knew it was a string instrument, and it wasn't a small one.
And I learned how to shoot at a very young age. My father taught me how to shoot when I was 6, but it wasn't something that we did frequently.
Yeah.
Be like, rent a lane, punch holes in paper for an hour or two, and then the guns go back in the safe, and I wouldn't see them for 3 to 4 years at a time.
Oh, wow.
Right? That's how infrequent I was shooting when I was younger. Now, once I started working at Google and I had some disposable income, I'm like, okay, it's time to go buy my first gun.
Right.
SIG P226, amazing platform. And that's also around the time that Top Shot started airing on the History Channel.
Okay.
You know, I'm just a self-taught amateur nobody, you know, just, you know, now that I owned my first gun, I was going to the range a little bit more. And of course, you know, rarely do you just buy one gun. It's like, okay, well, now I want a Remington 870 pump shotgun, and oh, I want a Glock 34, I wanted this, I wanted that.
Yeah.
And so then I started going to my local range with a lot more frequency. And at first it was just, you know, go to the static line and, you know, just you know, hit, you know, shoot at paper targets and whatnot. But my range has a wonderful action sports, you know, component to it. And that's where I was introduced to IDPA and USPSA and all these other action sports. And then I realized, I'm like, wow, you don't have to be just static, you know, standing behind a line or sitting at a bench. Right. And don't get me wrong, I mean, that's fun.
That's always cool too, sure.
Yeah, but this ability and the opportunity, and this is, so, you know, I grew up in Southern California. And in the 80s and 90s, there just wasn't a big, like, gun community, or I guess I'll just say, if there was one, like, I wasn't a gun guy, right? So the whole concept of civilians having holstered weapons, like, that was not a part of my reality. So when I was at my, you know, at my home range, seeing civilians, you know, running around, you know, running and gunning, and they got holsters, I mean, I just assumed that they were law enforcement or like military. Yeah. And, you know, I got into competitive shooting because I stumbled upon an IDPA match. I saw a civilian in regular clothes and holster all the, you know, the gear, and I go up to him, I'm like, hey, like, what is this? And he explained IDPA, and I was like, hey, like, well, I'm a civilian. Like, how do I sign up for this and get involved? And, you know, that was a huge moment for me, right? That set me on this trajectory of getting deeper into the fundamentals of marksmanship, and also expanding my horizons to understand, hey, like, I mean, shooting was already fun, but action sports is a whole nother layer of fun, level of fun for me. So when Top Shot started airing, you know, if you've seen the show, it's wild. Some of the most incredible weapons in these custom challenges. It's like Disneyland for adults with guns, just like these crazy kind of contraptions and stages that they put together. Yeah, they put like these little scenarios together. They'd pull out some historical firearm, and you'd have to pretend you're at a saloon shooting, you know, 6-shooters and shoot the bottles and stuff, like all sorts of wild stuff like that. And so it was not only educational, right? Yeah, because you got the historical, you know, background about the firearm, and they usually put the firearm and the challenge in the time period of the gun. That was kind of a frequent occurrence to add to the realism, right? Of, okay, here's this, you know, firearm. And actually, it wasn't always just firearms. It was bows and arrows, crossbows, throwing knives and axes, and just, yeah, learning sort of like the history of weapons was really, really fun. But as a viewer, you know, I was just a regular guy, like, watching Top Shot on the couch with my two buddies. And after season 2 aired, and then we watched the finale, you know, I got this like wild idea in my head, and I told my buddies, I'm like, hey, I'm gonna like audition for Top Shot. And, you know, I was a self-taught amateur shooter who had 0 accolades, 0 trophies. You know, I'm shooting in my local matches, and I'm not putting up any good numbers. Like, it's like,
it's not like you're taking home trophies.
No, not like, you know, I'm like kind of the last person that should, you know, be like competing on a show like this. But, you know, you sometimes, right, if you're watching one of your favorite like game shows, Price is Right, Jeopardy, or you sometimes have these fantasies in your head, like, oh, right, I know the right answer, you know, that question. And, you know, then watching Top Shot, I don't know why, but I'd watch a challenge and I'd see competitors miss, and be like, I can make that shot.
I can miss just as good as they can. Please.
And I also grew up and come from a place where you put up or shut up. I mean, right? Talk is always cheap. Like, and that's what I love about the shooting sports. It's like, look, like some people love to, boast about, how good. And it's like, look, like you got to show me, not tell me.
Right. And here's a gun. Here's a magazine.
Let's go. Giddy up. And that's, I'm a competitor. I've always been a competitor, like all throughout my life. Whether it was school, baseball, music, even my group of friends that I grew up with. If we had a pile of rocks and like we'd dig a hole in the ground and be like, all right, how many rocks can you get into the hole that we just dug? We'd make games out of anything and everything. And one thing that I want to share with you about the whole Top Shot experience. I guess I've never. Let me start with the sort of the insight. Some of the competitors on Top Shot, they at certain points like lost their will to win, and it was some of these moments where they're under the gun, like they're behind, like they're on the precipice of losing, and you just see them kind of give up. Now, I'm not saying everybody, but I don't know how to give up. It's like when I'm in a corner and when everything's on the line, like that's just where I dig into the reserves.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
And it's do or die. And I guess I sort of undervalued that particular skill set that I have of just being able to really, come from behind. And anybody who plays sports, or if you're a musician, right, it's like if you're playing a song and like you mess up, right, you hit the wrong note or you get off rhythm, like that could be catastrophic.
Oh my gosh, right? Absolutely.
For musicians.
Once you get in your head that you made a mistake, you're like, oh my God, I can't believe I made that mistake. And then you make another one. Yeah,
you start living in the past. You're like, oh my gosh, like that mistake, like how come that happened? And now you're not even focused on the next note or in the future of the song. So, for competitors, right, it's very much about like, well, you need to like acknowledge the error, but then, right, there's sort of this like real-time diagnosis of what happened and how do I make sure that this doesn't happen again. Because in a shooting competition, well, if I miss and I miss and miss and miss again, well, clearly I'm doing something wrong and I need to change whatever it is that I'm doing. But so that's where your brain has to be actively thinking about, how do I correct for this? And so I love the Top Shot experience. It was to be with the best shooters in the world and shooting these amazing weapons and in these amazing challenges. We got to shoot an M1919 machine gun that's mounted to a World War II half-track vehicle.
Oh my God.
And they set up this course of, it was like a battlefield reenactment. Simulated like mortars and like smoke and all sorts of explosions, right? And we're driving down this this road, and we got 100 rounds on this this belt-fed machine gun, and that was just one of the many incredible challenges that we went through.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And which season was this?
This is season 4.
Season 4.
Yeah.
Okay. And
this is actually my 10-year anniversary.
Oh, very cool.
Top Shot. Yeah, so it's 10 years ago, 2012, and it totally changed my life.
Totally changed it. And you won.
Yeah, I won. Yeah, I beat, against all odds. I beat, law enforcement, military guys, Olympic shooters, lifelong hunters. And the prize was $100,000, which was amazing, and then a pro shooting contract with Bass Pro Shops.
Wow!
And Bass Pro was amazing. I mean, any gun owner will appreciate this dream scenario where you want certain guns and certain ammo and certain gear, and it just like wouldn't it be great if that all just materialized
Right.
and it didn't hurt your bank account?
Right.
And so with Bass Pro Shops, I would just be like, yep, I'd like a Benelli M2. I'd like a Glock 34. I'd like 60,000 rounds of ammunition across, 223 and 12 gauge and 9mm, and
Right.
like pallets.
They're like, okay, it's on the way.
Yeah, it was literally this dream job for me of, literally gearing up.
Mm-hmm.
And Bass Pro Shops, they sent me all around the country.
Yeah.
Shooting 3-gun matches, USPSA matches, and for me, the most fun part about all of that for me wasn't the guns.
Mm-hmm.
It was always and still is the people.
Yeah.
And I have met some of the most amazing Americans many of whom are my very, very good friends. Especially as a pro shooter, we go to all these matches, and it's like the same. It's like they're the same group of shooters, right? We're all going right to there's like a 3-gun circuit, basically, right? So I'm seeing all the same
Same
competitors
folks.
at these matches, which is great because we are our own family, right? And I'd show up at a 3-gun match, and now I've got 30 of my friends, my shooter friends, who are always just sort of there. And so I love that experience. And I think a lot of non-gun people don't understand that like social aspect of shooting.
Yeah, so for me, I've heard so many people say, you go to these conferences and all the gun folks, and it's a family reunion and all that kind of stuff. I never really got that until I went to the GRPC the second time. And you go the first time, you're like, it's overwhelming. There's people you've seen and heard of and read and watched and listened to, and then you connect with them, and then you become friends with them. You follow them on social media, you do their show, you write to them, blah blah blah. You communicate back and forth, and then when you see them the next year, then it really feels like a homecoming, because you're like, or a family get together, because you're like, I haven't seen you for a year. I've watched this. You've been doing this. This is great. This is awesome, and it really is a family reunion.
And there's just there's obviously a lot to be said about being with people who are like-minded in their either love of the shooting sports, our affinity for our constitutional rights, speaking out and defending the Second Amendment. And it has been, so one thing to touch on, I was not a 2A advocate before Top Shot. I was just, an occasional gun guy, right? I just,
Right.
sometimes go to the range kind of thing. But Top Shot changed my life, where it made me realize that the freedoms that we take for granted may not always be there, right? And the assault weapons ban sort of, conversation started back up right after I won Top Shot. And, here I am with, 2 or 3 AR-15s, and when the assault weapons ban first came about, 94, and it lasted until 2004, I didn't own any ARs, and also, I didn't own any, but I wasn't really a gun guy. So that first assault weapons ban, just, I didn't even know it existed.
Yeah.
But now, just won Top Shot Season 4, now I own, 3 AR-15s, and they're literally coming for our guns.
They're coming for your guns. They're coming for everything, particularly in, occupied territory like California.
In San Francisco, I live in San Francisco, California, and I think we all have these moments in life where there's either something bad or some kind of threat that is either looming on the horizon, or it's like right there in front of you and you're in it, and then you have to ask yourself, what am I going to do about this? Right? And so for me, with all the anti-gun, all the gun control stuff, it's like, well, I could ignore all of the gun control stuff and just I'm a fun person. I like to do fun things, but I am also a very serious person at times, right? Especially when it comes to Second Amendment advocacy work. you know, and so I could either kind of be quiet and just, you know, let other people, right? Let other people fight for my rights and fight for my freedom, right? Or the other choice was, well,
we're banging the here. It's fine.
Right. Or the other choice is, well, you know, lean in and learn about the Second Amendment, the nuances. I mean, it can get pretty complicated, especially to the layperson, who maybe all they know about guns is what they see in the news, which is all, you know, mass shootings and, you know, oh, weapons of war, and, you know, these weapons of mass. I could write all this introduction of very provocative and like negative language, right, around firearms. And so I said to myself, well, like I want to be part of the fight, right, and help defend, obviously not just, you know, my rights, but it's our rights. Like this is a country that is very special and very unique, and we all have to speak up and show up to defend the things that we believe in. So I have Top Shot to credit, you know, in making me a Second Amendment and civil rights advocate. It's not something that I thought was going to happen or I wanted to happen. It was just
it's just kind of how life took you.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the path that you ended up on, which is really cool. Which is really cool. How long were you? Are you still doing stuff for Bass Pro?
It was a 4-year sponsorship. Yeah, gotcha. It was awesome. You know, so in 2015, my then boyfriend, but now husband, he's like, Chris, you've had a ton of fun flying around the country. He's like, I know you just love hanging out with all your friends, but you need to come back to Silicon Valley full time and make some real money again. I'm like, yeah. Crap. Yeah, I think the
probably time to grow up.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I run dual careers though, right? Full time in Silicon Valley, and then all my Second Amendment advocacy is is a part-time gig, and it's a mix of, you know, sometimes I get some paid engagements, but a lot of my activity is volunteer time, right? Yeah. You know, I'm here in Detroit on my dime. You know, I'm not getting paid. You know, no one sent me here. Yeah. And I'm thankful, you know, that you know, I can have these two careers, you know, in tech and in the gun community, that, you know, it makes me feel fulfilled, right? That you know, I'm doing work that is meaningful. And, you know, yeah, a lot of people may think it's atypical for like a tech guy to also be a gun guy, and he's also a gay guy, and he's a this and that. So, like, you know, with all like the labels, and so this, like the identity politics, you know, I come from a place that, you know, everybody's, you know, there's lots of nuance, right? And, you know, just because you are a tech person, like, doesn't necessarily mean that you are like anti-gun. Like, I know lots of pro-gun tech people. Like, that's kind of one of my social circles. I know a lot of gay gun owners, right? So it's like there are these right, these very strong overlapping, right, concentric circles of, you know, just because you're a Democrat, for example, you know, obviously, like, there's a lot of anti-gun, right, Democrats, and but a lot of people, well, they absorb this label of being a Democrat, and it's like the whole tribalism thing. Oh, well, now I need to, like, just go and check all the boxes of this Democrat, you know, tribe. Right. And it's like, no, like, the answer is no. You don't have to check all the boxes, right? You don't have to be an anti-gun Democrat. Like, there are pro-gun Democrats. And I guess my point here is, I guess it's so frustrating when people are kind of against a freedom, or against a thing without really having experienced it, or like researched it, or at least like be educated. Yeah, right? Take an educated, get some information on it, have an educated guess or an educated stance on how they feel about things. Yeah, don't be anti-gun just because your parents are anti-gun and they tell you that, oh, you can't, you know, you should be anti-gun because we are too, right? Like, that's the kind of mentality that, well, one, I mean, it's lazy. It's literally lazy if you're just gonna let other people or the government tell you how to think and what to do. So, you know, one thing, and you know, I really value, you know, one American value that I really, you know, continue to promote and to you know, I don't know, but the words are not like coming out of my mouth right now. I'm just like, I'm just sort of like saying words and my brain's not connecting the synapses. Anyway.
That's all right. So yeah, I mean, so I think what you're trying to say is just, you don't obviously you don't have to be a Democrat to be anti-gun. You could be a pro-gun Democrat. You can be an anti-gun Republican. We have those as well. And the whole identity politics is certainly a trap that people get into, but you don't have to follow that. Like, it doesn't have to be your thing. My deal is this: I like shooting guns. I don't care about anything else. Like, that stuff's irrelevant to me. Don't be a jerk, and we'll get along. You know what I mean? What you do with your time is what you do with your time. You know, that's really how I've become, and I think I've become more that way after I became a gun guy, and after I became a little more freedom oriented, and saying, hey, listen, you know what? If somebody wants to smoke pot, it's not for me. I don't want to do it. I'm not going to stop them from doing it, but I'm not going to do it. You know what I mean? And I let people be. And this is where I'm like, okay, maybe being an overweight, middle-aged conservative white guy leans a little more to being an anarchist, you know, or sorry, a libertarian, but I don't want to go off to.
Was that really anarchist. A mistake?
Bad Freudian slip, right? I don't want to be an anarchist, but I want to be down with liberty and say, hey, listen, you know what, you like to do this? That's not for me, but dude, knock yourself out.
Yeah, like, right. As long as you're not hurting yourself or other people, then like have at it. I
don't drink tequila because of the way other people behave when they drink it. I've had my bad experiences with it, but I've seen other people get absolutely nuts. I'm like, yeah, that's that. I'm not doing that. I remember being a kid hearing about drugs, and they're like, hey, if you take cocaine, your heart's going to explode and you're going to die. And I'm like, that doesn't seem like something I want to do. So I'm going to pass on that, you know? So anyway, how did all of this, try to get back on track, Charlie.
Oh, we had a track?
So you were with Bass Pro for 4 years. When did you write your book? When did that come out?
Yeah, so I wrote a book called Shoot to Win, and it is a book for the beginning marksman, right? For pistol, rifle, and shotgun. And it has all the tips and tricks and the fundamentals of marksmanship that I studied, you know, in order to win Top Shot. So, yeah, after I won Top Shot, a lot of people were like, Chris, you should write a book about, well, they're like, initially, like, about your Top Shot experience. I'm like, well, I don't know if I can really fill a book about, and like, who would want to read, you know, about my Top Shot experience?
I always tell people like, oh, you should write a book. I'm like, it's more like a pamphlet I write. Right. It's like a coloring book. That's what I would make.
You know, I approached training for Top Shot like a part-time job. And so it was 50 hours a week at Google for my day job, and then training was another 20 to 25 hours a week for 5 months. I had a 5-month training window. And the reason why I put in that much time and effort was because I knew how far behind the curve I was. Right? It's like, in my mind, I'm like, how am I going to hang with some of the best shooters in the world?
Sure.
You know, and so I treated training like a part-time job, you know, put in the time, studied like mad, you know, trained like hell. And Shoot to Win is a synopsis of how I trained to win Top Shot. And I wanted to take a very simple approach to explaining the fundamentals of marksmanship, because when I was training for Top Shot, you know, there were some of the concepts, like, you know, sight picture and sight alignment, like it can get a little confusing, like, especially once you start getting into breathing control and trigger control, and like basically tying all of like the magic that we're all going for with shooting is you got to put all the fundamentals together. It's like it's like swinging a baseball bat or a golf club. It's like, well, like there's a lot of technique
there's a lot to it,
Or if you're a musician, right? It's like you got your bow, you got your all your strings and finger action, whatnot. So yeah, putting this all together can be very challenging. So in Shoot to Win, I take a very simple approach. I try and explain concepts in just a very raw form, but also kind of like tie some analogies together. And yeah, I mean, I do talk a little bit about Top Shot in the book. I do talk a lot about actually me being a baseball player when I was younger, being a musician, and a lot of those components were around the training and learning mindset and mentality.
I've been a band teacher for 100 years, and I've always told students, I figured out after 100 years of teaching, there's only 3 things I teach people. I teach them what I call the 4 steps of practicing, and the 4 steps of practicing are getting the right rhythms, getting the right note names, and getting the right fingerings. The last step is to play. So the 4 steps of practicing are 3 things you need to know in order to play an instrument. You have to know how to play the rhythms, you have to know what the note names are, and you have to know what the fingerings are. And you do the step number 1 before you get to step number 2, and then you do step number 2, and then step number 3, and then step number 4 is putting it all together. The second thing I teach people is the way you eat an elephant is bite by bite. And the third thing I teach people is the secret to playing slow is to the secret to playing fast is to practice slow. And I went to a front sight class back in 2004, and they taught you how to draw the gun, and they're like, slow is smooth and smooth is fast. And I was like, that's what I teach my band kids. I just say it differently.
Yeah.
I'm like, I think I could become a gun instructor. Like it's teaching the fundamentals, teaching people sight alignment and trigger press,
And also with marksmanship, and I mean really, musicianship, sports, athletic, sports and stuff. It's all just mechanics, right? Like guns are these objects with moving pieces of metal and plastic, and there's some very simple physics, right, that are involved, and kind of again, like sort of like understanding like the fundamentals, and ultimately, marksmanship is about understanding the concepts and then applying them when you are using your firearms, so you can hit your targets, shoot faster and accurately, and use your firearm as you need and want it to.
That's cool. What else about the book?
You can buy it anywhere books are sold, on Amazon and iBooks, and it's been really, really fun to see Shoot to Win continue to be a resource for new shooters. Pandemic has been very weird, for lots of different reasons. One silver lining, though, that's come out of the pandemic is over 12 million new gun owners.
Yeah.
And that is pretty unprecedented. And we don't need to go into all the reasons for why. We just sort of understand there's been a lot of things happening in our country that is making a lot of people either reconsider gun ownership. I have met and heard of a lot of people, these new gun owners who were anti-gun. They were anti-gun, but everything that's been happening over the past few years made them re-question, or question or request, their anti-gun stance, and they decided, you know what? I don't trust law enforcement. I don't trust the government, or whatever reasons.
Right. I've heard for years that it's easier to get a gun than get a library card, and then you go in with this, this notion that it's easier to get a gun than it is to get a library card, and you find out, oh, hey, listen, in some states you have to take a class. Oh, in some states it's an 8-hour class. Oh, and then you have to go apply at the police. Oh, and then you have to go through these background checks, and then you can go down and buy a gun. Oh, and we're going to do a background check when you buy a gun as well.
And in California, yeah, you got to wait 10 days. You got to come back 10 days later to get your gun that you bought.
As Homer Simpson says, well, I'm not going to be mad in 10 days. But you have to go through all this, and people are like, wait, this is a bunch of baloney. Yeah, well, this is what we've been doing for, man, we've been doing it since the early 80s with the Brady Bill and the 10-day wait period, and it's compounded more and more and more. And people have woken up to this and said, I can't just go down to the gun store and buy a gun and start carrying it. I got to take a class. Oh, I can't just start shooting people because they park too close to me or they cut me off in traffic or something.
Yeah, there's a lot of training and education opportunities, and I would say that's one of the biggest challenges facing the gun community and the gun industry right now, which is, right, how do we reach out and connect with these 12 million new gun owners? Because we all know, well, you can't just buy a gun and be proficient with it, right? That doesn't just naturally happen. Or, I've run into some gun owners, new gun owners, who think, oh, the fact that the gun is in my house will keep me safe.
Right. Yeah, that's a big fallacy.
Yeah, and I have to explain, it's like, no.
There's a 10-round magazine, I need to buy 10 rounds of ammunition. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah,
this is when you're like, you know what, just sit down, we need to talk.
And, yeah, so right, making sure that we're connecting with these new shooters and gun owners, and, emphasizing training. And, it doesn't matter if you're a new gun owner or if you're an experienced long-time gun owner, everybody needs to train. Like, I'll be honest, like, I have fallen out of training. Like, I haven't, seriously trained for probably 2 years. I think, like, the whole pandemic basically was, just sort of quiet. Right. I am now, very intentionally wanting to get back into training. I'm going to be signing up for some courses, and I have my own, thankfully I have my own private range now, which was another silver lining of the pandemic. So, I, built this private range so I can practice more, right?
That's cool.
Remove a barrier, right? Because, usually going to the range, you got to load up the car, and, it's a whatever,
oh my gosh,
20, 40 minute drive. And,
right, it's a process. For some people, it's a process, for sure.
So I wanted to, like, make it easier for myself.
Sure. Look, when something happens in my schedule and something falls through, I call it the gift of time. So if you get the gift of time, and hey, listen, something falls through, you've now got a morning where you can do something, and you can go out for a half hour and shoot, which is cool. All right, listen, we're almost back to the range. I don't know if you noticed this, we actually drove by it.
Yeah.
Did you notice that?
I have been paying attention, believe it or not.
You haven't?
I have been. Okay. I have been paying attention to where we're driving. But.
So you, real quick, you were on another show. How did this other show come about? Go Big?
Yeah, so the Go Big show on TBS, I got a random email at the beginning of the pandemic from a producer who was explaining this new show concept called the Go Big Show, and it's basically America's Got Talent on steroids, and doing like more like
America's Got Other Talent.
And they wanted gun people, which was really cool. And as I was asking more questions about sort of like the format of the show, and I learned that they wanted to do indoor shooting at a sports arena that is not purpose made for guns.
That could be an issue.
Yeah, and I told them, like, look, like, I don't know if anybody in the gun industry has any experience. Like, how do you safely basically create an indoor
an indoor portable range?
Yeah. And I told him, like, look, like, the only way I can say yes to this is if we can safely do this. And obviously, I mean, this is, imagine it's a sports arena, like with the cover. It's like you got the stadium seating. It's like, a basketball kind of stadium. Right. We got the jumbotron, hanging from the middle of this. And I'm like,
Like the 22 travels a mile to a mile and a half.
Right, right. And so I challenged the production team, and I said, look, if I'm gonna come on a show like this, right? If you're selling this as like America's Got Talent on steroids, I 100% absolutely need to shoot full auto. I'm not gonna come on this show if you will not let me shoot full auto.
Nice.
And I mean, that was a whole nother layer of like complexity. I mean, you know, I had a Tommy gun, you know, in 45 ACP, and I mean, I'm just like ripping away at these like oversized gummy bears.
Oh
Like, but it was cool to meet Snoop Dogg, who was one of the celebrity judges.
Yeah.
You know, Jennifer Nettles, Rosario Dawson, Cody Rhodes, Bert Kreischer was the the host. Yeah, I mean, what a cool experience! Like just sort of that within itself. Like you know, I'm on a first name basis with Snoop. Like he knows who I am. Like I never thought. Yeah, I was like, I never thought Snoop would ever know who I am.
Right.
But back to the guns, what an amazing experience. And you know, I worked with an armorer and a safety, you know, set designer, and basically we used frangible rounds. Okay. Combined with, you believe it or not, like just a lot of pieces of plywood as backstops. I mean, like thick, you know, wood beams. And if you can imagine, like we literally, like, you know, they put some protective material over like the basketball court, you know, surface. Yeah, we built these custom stages, and I was shooting guns inside of a sports arena. And again, yeah, it was Tommy gun, M1 carbine, which was a ton of fun. I had a I forget the model. It was a Winchester pump shotgun from World War II era.
This guy's got the same idea that we do. I do not want to get on 94 West.
Yeah, this is fun.
Oh, let the good times roll. Oh, that's not fun.
Yikes. That hurt.
Yeah, that guy in the truck's like, I'm glad he's got a truck.
Oh, ouch. Ouch. I hope the bottom of your car is okay. Yeah. Well, we'll poke our heads underneath.
Right, I didn't see anything fall off.
Yeah, and hopefully there's nothing leaking underneath.
Oh, man.
Oh.
Anyway.
So the Go Big show, so much fun. I got to shoot music. Also, that was a part of sort of my acts. Yeah. So that was a ton of fun.
The pitched plates, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they're called musical targets. Okay. And yeah, I shot with Volk-Hortzen 1022 rifle, and then used that M1 carbine. And you know, I learned something that, you know, probably sound obvious in retrospect, but the report of the M1's, you know, gunfire was too loud, and it overshadowed the musical tones of the plates, which is really unfortunate. And you know, I got zero practice with the guns inside the arena. So you know, I got practice time, but it was at an outdoor range. Right. You know, all the gun you know, report is like dissipating, and yeah, I mean, I practiced. I'm like, yeah, this sounds great. Get into the arena, oh yeah, I mean, just like gunshot, like just like reverberating through the whole stadium. And so in retrospect, I should have gotten a suppressor. I should have either gotten a suppressor or changed the caliber, right? And just, but anyway, what a blast. You know, definitely a super fun and memorable career experience for me.
That is totally cool. All right, we got a few minutes left. What else do you want to let people know about?
Let's see. Well, I've been getting, you know, very involved with suicide prevention in the gun community, and working with the firearms industry and medical professionals and academics. And you know, I was astounded 10 years ago when I was, you know, getting into the gun industry full time and learning that 2/3 of firearms deaths in this country are suicides. 2/3, right? This is the majority of firearms deaths in our country, and we aren't talking about it. All the attention goes towards mass shootings, kind of gang violence, all of these all the homicides. But it's like, wow, like if we want to make a difference and literally save people's lives and bring the suicide, the overall numbers down, and bring this percentage down, like, right, we should be talking about this. And clearly suicide, fairly taboo subject in our culture, and it's uncomfortable, right? It is really uncomfortable. But to just bring this down to a personal level, if you have a friend who is suffering, and if you could play any role in easing your family member or your friend's suffering and possibly save their life, wouldn't you would do it?
Yeah.
It's really not even a question, right? It's not a question. You would do it.
Of course.
Now, the question then becomes, well, how? How do you do that? And for me, like, I didn't have any knowledge of like suicide prevention,
right.
Strategies and whatnot, but I've learned a lot, and the firearms industry has really embraced this issue and understanding that suicide is preventable, which is something that I didn't really realize. I always just thought, if somebody wants to kill themselves, like they're just going to do it, or they'll find a way. But that's actually not true, right? So we do have the ability to interrupt, right, these moments of personal crisis, and then there's some very interesting tactical things that we can do with firearms as well. And what I mean by that is, if you were having a mental health crisis, and you're afraid of, oh gosh, I might lose my guns if I go seek mental help.
Somebody, yeah.
But I could be like, hey, Charlie, I'll hang on to your guns, right, while you figure out, your,
oh my God, absolutely,
right, your situation, and just this simple act of putting what we call time and space, right, between the sort of crisis incident or crisis period, right? It's like, if your gun's not easily accessible, right, then you're putting, and if it's in your buddy's house or another family member's house, or you're putting space and time to give that person, right, some
time to think through and decompress and come up with a game plan. I did that myself. When I went through my divorce 10 years ago, I gave my guns away 3 different times, and I'm like, you know what? I don't want to have these. Not necessarily for me, but what I don't want is, I don't want my then wife, or I call her my first ex-wife. She doesn't watch the show, so that's fine. I call her my first. The kids don't watch it either, by the way, so they can't go like, "Hey, here's what Dad's saying about you, Mom." But I didn't want her, essentially, to red flag me and to get me kicked out of the house. So I called up a couple buddies. I'm like, hey, listen, would you mind taking these for a while and just hold on to them? You've got the guns, I've got the keys. You can't get to them without me. I can't get to them without you.
Yeah.
And I did that for a while, and then I took the guns back, and then I said, oh, you know what? Things are getting messy again. Would you, I asked someone else, would you mind taking them for a bit? And then finally asked another friend, and then it worked out. But it is important to, if you need a timeout, take a timeout.
Yeah.
Have someone hold onto your guns and find someone to talk to.
And so with the launch of this new 988 phone number, it's basically the 911 for mental health, which is really incredible, right? It's like, right, we all know, okay, if there's a fire, if there's some crime in progress, dial 911. But if you are having, if you're depressed, or if you, really anything, right? If you are suicidal, right? If you literally need just someone to talk to, you can now dial 988. And, I know we're running out of time here, but, veterans has been a huge focus for the suicide prevention efforts, because they're one of the, unfortunately, right, the larger demographics that who are taking their lives with firearms. And so, those of us in the gun rights space, we often, after a mass shooting or other terrible, crime with the firearm, right, we often say, well, we need to focus on mental health. But what does that mean? right? Like, what does that mean in practice? And so I'm really thankful that the firearms industry, this new 988 number, right? These are ways that we can literally connect people in crisis with professionals to help them get better, hopefully, right, reduce the amount of violent crime, not just, you know, with guns, but it's just violent crime, suicide, and just help put people back on a good path. So I'm optimistic. It's going to take a long time, clearly. I mean, this is sort of like the kind of like designated driver campaign of the 80s, or, you know, the everyone wear your seatbelt. Like, you know, not everyone's gonna like wear their seatbelts, you know, just like that overnight. I mean, it was like a multi-year,
it took a long time,
sustained effort. But now, you're right, like here we are, you know, some 40 years later, every car has seatbelts. You got some sort of a notifier if it doesn't, if it's not buckled and someone's in the seat. Yeah. So I'm very hopeful and optimistic that, you know, the gun industry, the gun community will continue to embrace these actual mental health solutions. And so, you know, the next time, you know, there's another, you know, mass shooting, you know, well, we can not just say we need to focus on mental health, but let's get more specific and say this is what we're actually doing, right? The money that we're investing in mental health services. I can't announce what will be announced in the next few months, but some major firearms manufacturers are going to be putting mental health resources in, you know, gun, you know, when you buy a gun, you know, there'll be a little, like, you know, either an insert, when you buy maybe a magazine, you know, a pistol magazine or a rifle magazine, that little same insert, right, or might be on the outside of the packaging. So, you know, we're going to start seeing, this new and sustained focus on mental health, you know, for gun owners, and make sure ultimately we want to be safe and keep each other safe. And I think this is going to be a really great way for us to accomplish that.
I hope so. This has been a lot of fun. Yeah. Chris, thank you so much for being on.
Thanks as always.
You need to plug stuff?
If you want to follow me on social media, my handle's Top Shot Chris, and I've got a website which I need to revamp.
Maybe, do you know? Maybe you know a tech guy who can do that.
Yeah, maybe I know someone in technology. But topshotchris.com is my website, and thanks for watching. This was a lot of fun.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for watching the show. We appreciate you guys tuning in. If you like the show, please share it with somebody. If you are not a member of the Second Amendment Foundation, you can become a member at saf.org. You can contribute to the CCRBKA, the Committee for the Citizens' Right to Keep and Bear Arms. You can find all of your favorite pro-gun podcasts at sdrn.us. That's Self-Defense Radio Network. And share the show. This is how we get the stagecoach across America. Again, thank you so much. We'll talk to you guys later.